I'll call the November the 12th, 2020 meeting of the Wythe County Board of Supervisors to order tonight. We do have Mr. Terry joining us remotely per Rule 5.3 in our rule of procedures. He is allowed to do that as long as we have a quorum physically here. Tonight, to offer the invocation, Mr. Hankins, our Assistant County Administrator, if you would rise and please remain standing for the pledge. Mr. Hankins.
Our loving and gracious Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to come together today to be of service to our community. We're grateful for the opportunity. We pray to Heavenly Father that during these times of great national division that we would come together and be a unified community, that we would work on your behalf. As many communities face monuments and memorials being torn down, we pray that we will be solid rocks, that we will be those on whom people can rely to do the right thing for their communities. And we pray to Heavenly Father that in this time of difficulty in trusting others, that we will be worthy of trust, that we will use the morals and the code which you have built for us through your word, that we will follow that we will use it as our guide, be able to make decisions that prove worthy of you. We pray that you will guide and bless those who make those decisions tonight. Guide us and lead us as only you can. For it's in your name that we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yesterday was Veterans Day. If we have any veterans in the audience, anybody would like to recognize Mr. Cook, our own veteran. Thank you for your service, sir. Moving on to the agenda, first item is citizens' time. We have one speaker signed up, Ms. Meyer.
Good evening. In regard to the Budget Committee recommending, it looks like hazardous pay, it was in your board packet. The budget is hurting as it is, and it looks like to me that they wanted to allocate money from our general fund to go into with or be used with the CARES money for remuneration for employees and part-time employees. Granting compensation for a perceived threat is not a good idea. Life in general is a threat, and it's each and everybody's responsibility. Perhaps there's another way of doing this and not using general fund money. Or perhaps let's take the CARES money and use that to help pay for the health insurance that the county is now funding for our employees. That would seem to make it fair for everybody. Hazardous pay for our people is really not necessary. You've gone above and beyond purchasing PPEs and all kinds of plexiglass, this and that and the other thing, and you've done due diligence as far as employees are concerned, and this certainly is not necessary considering the state of affairs that the entire county population is in at this time. So please do not consider adding any general fund money for compensation, extra compensation to your CARES Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. That was all we had signed up.
You got time for one more?
Yes, sir.
It's not going to be long. My name's Jim Ennis. I live up near Max Meadows. And I'm also concerned about the money being spent for this, that, and the other thing. Probably one of the most important things you all do is fiscal responsibility. Just because we have the money or we want to spend the money or fill somebody's pockets, I don't think that's a good idea. In the name of fiscal responsibility, there's needs that can be had. You know, you talk about maybe software for students or more teachers to help. I've heard that teachers are swamped because they got to do everything twice, and you know, just throwing money around. I know they're going to do it again, They're talking about spending trillions more dollars, printing more money from Washington. They're going to do this all over again and again. We just got to be more responsible, because this is going to be on the backs of our grandchildren, children, the way we're spending money like it's growing out of trees, and it literally is. They just want to do it, want to spend $4 trillion, $3 trillion, $2 trillion, and they may do it twice more. We got to get serious about this. I know everybody was upset about how money was thrown around for that center down there, I hate to even mention it, and that's why a lot of you are here today, because the fiscal responsibility was not being recognized. But we've got to be really, really careful about spending all this free money, because it really isn't free. So please consider. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else speak during citizens' time? Not, we'll close citizens' time, move on to the agenda for a public hearing to vacate a right-of-way. I'll read the public hearing notice. In compliance with section 15.2-2204 of the Code of Virginia and amendments thereto, the Wythe County Board of Supervisors will conduct a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance for vacation of right-of-ways or streets entitled, and an ordinance discontinuing and vacating lots 1 through 16 and the interior right-of-ways of the Twin Ridge West subdivision located in the Lead Mines District of Wythe County, Virginia. The Board of Supervisors will hear comments from citizens concerning the adoption of the proposed ordinance. The public hearing will be held on Thursday, November the 12th, 2020 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom of the Wythe County Office Building, 340 South 6th Street, Wytheville, Virginia. A copy of the proposed ordinance is on file in the County Administrator's office located at 340 South 6th Street, Wytheville, Virginia, or online at www.withcode.org for the public to review. We do not have anybody signed up to speak to the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak on the vacation of the right-of-ways? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, or the public comment section of the hearing. Mr. Barrett, would you like to summarize this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the plat was presented to this back to you on the October 13th meeting. Mr. Porter was owns all of these lots and was proposing to vacate this right-of-way. He owns everything that surrounds it. Obviously, there have been no comments from the public hearing. Staff would recommend adoption of the ordinance.
Entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-04.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Here now we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
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 So approved.
Mr. Chairman, I would also request, this is one of those, the vacation of right-of-way policy would require purchase of that property, but there has not been any maintained right-of-way or anything that the county has done there. I would request approval of his request to waive the payment of the right-of-way fee.
Entertain a motion to waive the right-of-way fee.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
I'll second.
Second. I don't know which one of you motioned it, so.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Here now we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 So approved. Anything else on that, Mr. Barrett?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next item on the agenda is payment of the invoices. Entertain a motion to pay the invoices.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry. Have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any invoice any member would like to pull out and discuss? Here and now we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
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 So approved. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of our previous meeting from October the 27th, 2020. Entertain a motion to approve.
So make it. Motion.
Have a motion by Mr. McRoberts.
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Smith. Any corrections or additions to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
So approved. Next item is old business. Mr. Barrett, do we have anything under old business?
I do not have any items, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on to new business. First item is the election update and abstract of votes. Mr. Counts?
Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good. I just wanted to come and give y'all an update on how things went for the election. Particularly here in Wythe County, we had 15,000 folks turn out to vote, which was about 73% of our turnout. In 2016, we had 12,000 votes, so we saw a little increase there. We've also now officially broken 20,000 registered voters in the county too. We had always hovered at about 19 this whole last 2 or 3 years, and now we are over 20,000 registered voters in the county now. So we used 56 officers of elections around the county on election day, utilized all of our normal polling places. We really had a great participation with new folks volunteering and being willing to work for us. Like I said, 14 to 15-hour days, and it's something that most folks are interested in doing. So we had a great participation in following up with the folks that did work for us. They all seem to be interested in working future elections. I'd like to give a big thank you to the county staff that helped us out. Billy and his guys were really helpful with us this election. On the Wednesday after the election, Kevin and Chip came out and helped get everything in because I was unable to go out on Wednesday, so they helped out a lot as well. So like I said, we wouldn't have been able to do it without them. Mr. Catron was here on election day. We never had any instances where we had to call him in, so I'm sure he got caught up on a lot of other work, but he was here for us if we needed him. This election, we did see increased expenses, primarily with early voting. I think as I had previously mentioned to y'all before, though, I was able to offset almost all of that with the CARES Act money that my office in particular received. So we were able, like I said, to cover the cost of our staff along with the extra voting machine we had to purchase. In terms of early voting, it's not going anywhere. Like I said, we'll be required to do it for every election moving forward. We had about 6,000 citizens vote either early in person or by mail. So like I said, we saw a huge demand with that. I'd always spoken with Mr. Bear, and I of course, this being our first one, we're not really sure what our turnout was going to be. But on the Friday before the election, we had 516 people come through and vote, which sometimes is more than what Huddle sees on election day. So, it was pretty impressive that they were able to, have that many folks come through and never to really have a line build up to where folks had to wait too long anyways. I did kind of want to mention, going into next year, we will still have early voting. Our location that we had worked out well. I really didn't receive too many complaints from folks. I think, it's just kind of the typical folks not figuring out where to park at to get into the building the easiest. But like I said, overall, I think our location worked well. I know in talking with Ms. Vault, I don't think the reassessment folks will be done by the time the election next year comes around. So I did want to kind of bring that up, that, that we, in terms of space and looking for utilizing space for next November, I'm not sure exactly where we can do it at. Seeing the turnout that we had for this election, I don't know if our office would be big enough to handle that many folks, but because I did want to kind of go ahead and put that out there now. That way we'd kind of be thinking of another location if we aren't able to use that space. Do y'all have any questions for me about anything?
The early voting, does that apply to all elections?
It does.
And
Town
I guess-
elections.
And that's what I was.
Yeah.
We have the Honorable Mr. Gilman in attendance from the Wythefield Town Council. That was where my question was leading. you know, the towns are responsible
They cover the cost,
to
yep.
cover the cost of
Yes.
their elections. And, you know, some of these small towns, that's gonna be a pretty big
Well,
chunk of money.
and that's something with me and with something that me and my board have been discussing. You know, I don't necessarily know if it's fair if there's a Royal Retreat Town Council election and a Wytheville Town Council election for folks. I don't know how many folks from Royal Retreat would be interested in driving to Wytheville to vote in their own election. And, you know, but I will say, I mean, for this election, of course, we saw a great turnout from around the entire county. I mean, we really did. But, you know, like I said, coming back to that and sharing that expense, that is something I'll be reaching out to the towns on for 2022, just because it is something that we're going to see, like I said. And the amount of folks from Wytheville that voted early in this election, I'd say they'll do it for town council elections as well, so.
And that was just, you know, and it's, you know, not only Wythe County, Southwest Virginia,
Yeah.
but some of the small towns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because early voting starts
45 days
45
before.
days.
Yeah, yeah. And now there are exceptions. Of course, we have to have it here starting the 45 days out, but you could always open up a satellite location in that town or closer to the election. It don't have to cover the full 45 days. So that possibly would be an option too, possibly. So, but,
Did you say that we had 73% of registered voters
Yeah.
come out? Or,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, 73% of our registered voters turned out. Yeah. So.
And I will say that I voted in person in the retreat, and they done a really good job with the way they had everything set up.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, it was like voting any other year, except for the lady that's swooped in and cleaned the voting thing.
Yeah.
Same in Wytheville.
Yeah, and I'll say too with that, we had, we basically picked our busiest polling places, Royal Retreat, West Wytheville, East Wytheville, and Fort Chiswell. But we had volunteers from the Medical Reserve Corps come in and come in, and at Royal Retreat, I believe that individual, I think she was there the entire day that day, so she was willing to come in and do that and everything. And Royal Retreat was our busiest precinct on election day. We had 1,300 folks turn out and vote there, so it was our busiest one overall. So.
Did you bring your pen back, Mr. Chairman?
It's at the house.
Yeah, do you have your pen? Yeah.
I was gonna say that, with the influx of people taking selfies with their I voted stickers for social media, that you might need to step your sticker game up, because I know Smith County had nicer stickers than we did.
Well, you know, I've noticed that as well. So, you know, I should have gotten the one with like the bald eagle on.
And some of them had, like, you know, the presidential seal, and I was like,
Yeah, I know. I messed up by getting the I voted early stickers. I had to get those from the I voted on election day stickers. So maybe that's what I should have done, was just get the presidential seal one. So. Anything else?
anybody else have anything for Mr. Counts?
No.
Thank you,
All right,
sir.
sounds good. Thank y'all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing I was going to mention to y'all too. Any help I can be for redistricting or anything, I'm more than happy to help out. So whatever. When that time comes, I don't know when that'll be, but whenever that time comes around. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
Lynn.
you.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend a motion just to accept the abstract of votes.
Entertain a motion to accept the abstract of votes. So moved. Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Here none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 So approved. Next item on the agenda is a road name request. Do you want to summarize or you want me to? Because I'm familiar with the area.
Go right ahead.
It's down on Gullion Fork. The actual address is 492, and there's 2 or 3 different pieces or residents up. It's a pretty steep driveway, and they've requested to have it named Story Lane, and I think it would help 911 response. It is a little confusing.
Our ordinance basically wants 3 or more on there, recommends naming the roads. So staff recommends proceeding with naming Story Lane.
Entertain a motion to name that Road, Story Lane.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Here now we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
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 So approved. Next item on the agenda is our infectious disease prevention plan. I believe this is for revision, Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, after meeting with the committee the other day, reviewing it, there was recommendations to move some of the people that are dealing more with the public, especially dealing more with the public now, from a low-risk category up to a medium-risk category, and basically just make certain that all the safety precautions are taken, and that those individuals also go through the video training in the process.
Any questions on that? Entertain a motion to approve the revision.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any question or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear and understand all that was going on with that. I apologize.
It's the revision to the infectious disease prevention plan that was in your board packet.
Awesome.
Anything else, Mr. Terry?
No, sir.
Well, we're going to do a roll call vote. We'll start with you, sir.
Aye.
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 So approved. Anything else under new business, Mr. Barry?
No, sir.
Moving on to board reports, budget committee.
The Budget Committee met on November 9th, 2020, and makes the following recommendations. Proceeding with Design 9 to conduct a broadband development study at the contract price of $38,750. This is CARES Act eligible project.
And Mr. Barry, I'll let you proffer what that is.
I'm going to defer. Mr. Hankins has done a good job of doing this, so I'll defer to him.
I apologize, I forgot that, Mr. Hankins.
Real quick, this is a broadband development study. We solicited for RFPs. We've got 3 firms that were interested in doing it. Design 9 is based out of Blacksburg, and they're pros at doing this. They've done it all over the country, most recently in Montana and North Dakota, some of the upper Midwest states. They have worked extensively in Virginia. I've checked their references, and we recommend that you grant this so that we can develop future plans for how we might roll out broadband in the event there's additional federal funds that become available to support that.
And I will refer you to page 84 of the agenda. That's a sample of the survey that they will be sending out immediately for residents to be filling out and sending in. I think it will provide us a good amount of information.
And I did read that survey. It is very thorough.
Detailed.
There's both a business survey and a residential survey, so the appropriate folks will have to fill those out. It'll give us different data that we can use to roll out those future plans.
And we discussed in budget committee working with the school system to kind of make sure we get this survey in the hands of every resident in Wythe County, because I think it's part of the reason that we realize how many underserved, or I don't know that you call them underserved or non-served areas. Any questions or discussion on that?
Just would mention, it does include mailing out to every household and business, so that's included in the pricing, no additional cost for that, so it should get into the hands of everybody. We'll use our social media and the press release just to let folks know that they need to be on the lookout for that, fill it out when they get it.
Well, if they're like me, they need it 3 times before they fill it out. Coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. Do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
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 So approved.
Purchasing 4 pickup trucks from Direct Dodge at the cost of $156,702. This is a CARES Act purchase for additional trucks for the fire departments.
Mr. Hankins, I'll refer back to you.
Yes, sir. As I told the committee, it felt like all I did my first 2 weeks was send out a request for proposals, and that's not far from being completely accurate. We did do a request. This was a request for sealed bids for trucks to be able to minimize exposure for our first responders so that they don't carry that back in their personal vehicles to their families and spread either carcinogenic or pathogenic exposures on to their loved ones. Direct Dodge was the only one that gave us a response back. We did reach out and try to solicit others. With where we're at in the CARES Act funding, a lot of companies can't make the vehicles fast enough. So it would be after the CARES Act money expires when the vehicle's being delivered. But Direct believes that they can get the vehicles in hand by the end of December to meet that requirement. This does come in above what we would have got with pricing from the state contract, but it's probably the best we're going to do at this point.
Any questions or discussion?
Is there a reason we got 2 short beds and 2 long beds?
That was the preference of the chiefs. We solicited we asked the chiefs of those departments what their preference would be, and that's what they indicated.
Any other questions or discussion? Coming from a committee that doesn't need a second, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 Transferring $1,231.75 from the registrar's budget, account 1302-461402, to the electoral board, line item 1301-453010. This is also CARES Act eligible expense.
Mr. Baird, do you want to summarize that? I can't find it.
Basically, it's just, he had some additional cost in the electoral board line item, and he had money in his budget. And because that is going to between 2 different objects, between the registrar's office and the electoral board, I cannot approve that transfer. It has to have the board approval, so it's just moving the funding from one of their departments to the other department.
Any questions or discussion on that request? Come from the committee, we don't need a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
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 So approved.
You want me to read all these at one time?
I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, if you want to, you can do all of these, and then if anyone wants to remove them, remove any of them to discuss further, and then vote on the rest of them as a block.
That's fine.
Approving the following CARES Act requests. Purchase of 10 additional MSA G1 SCBA face pieces for Byron Springs Fire Department, $3,101.30. Purchase of gloves, gear, extractor, and dryer for the Byron Springs Fire Department, and additional fire departments needing, any additional fire departments that's needing one, $9,400. Purchase of 4
Fujitsu.
F-7160 scanners for finance, $3,519.96. Purchase of 4 tables for the boardroom, $4,100. Purchase of 3 laptop computers for 911 capability for remote access for the 911 center, $50,540.49. Purchase of a remote radio system for 911 center, $209,130.50. Purchase of 2 exhaust fans for the Apex Center, contingent upon the project being completed by December 31st, 2020, $50,000.
Any questions or discussion on those?
Yeah, I have one. What is a purchase of 3 laptop computers, 911 capability for? Is that 50,000?
Yeah, and it's actually, it probably should be worded a little better, Mr. McRoberts. It's actually the computers and the Intrado software that goes with those computers in order to be functioning for the 911 centers. So it's not just laptops, it's the entire software package that goes with them.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
What kind of tables are we buying?
something similar to these right here that I've stolen from the Emergency Operations Center.
Borrowed.
And they're that expensive?
Yes.
Jeez.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would add, I did talk to all the fire chiefs, or either talked to them or emailed with them, and 5 of the departments are interested in getting the extractor dryers, so your cost would be closer to $50,000, but we have put that out for bid, put it out today. Bids are due back on the 23rd.
Anybody else?
The exhaust fans for the Expo Center, have we done enough research to know that this is going to work and get the ventilation that we need, unlike the last time?
Mr. Kinzer has been meeting with the Apex Authority, our county engineer. He has reviewed it. This will put intake fans on the western end of the building to go with the exhaust fans that are on the eastern end of the building to bring more air in and passing through and going out. He believes that this will provide a great assistance with the problems that they've been having. The exhaust fans alone did not provide enough intake coming in and pull air to be exiting the air on the other side.
So this will get rid of the problems with the engine exhaust?
That is the hope, yes, and that is where they think they are addressing it.
Okay.
That's a secondary use. It'll get COVID out first.
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah.
while we're doing it, we might as well make sure that we get it done so that we, I mean, there's a lot of people complained about the exhaust. And if we can fix that, then we have motocross and whatever else in there and it won't matter.
Anybody else have any questions? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry? Mr. Terry?
Just left the building.
He had indicated he had a few
Dead
places where he
spot.
thought he would be out, yeah.
Mr. Horny? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
So approved. I don't like change. Somebody's gone with me.
And, yeah, okay, very good.
You good?
Yeah, there is a typo on it. It said 2 fans, and it's actually 3 fans, and not 2 fans. Money's correct, but just so.
I was thinking there was 3 on the
Yeah,
other end.
when you read 2, I had to pull up here and confirm, but yes, that's, their request was for 3 fans, so.
Okay.
The Budget Committee recommends that the constitutional officers and county employees that have diligently worked through the COVID-19 pandemic be paid a hazard duty stipend. The committee recommends that the stipend, with a net amount of approximately $2,500 for full-time positions and for courtroom security and victim witness part-time positions. All other part-time positions will receive a net amount approximately $1,250. The stipend will be paid to those employees by the county on November 30th, 2020, and have been employed for at least 90 days. Funding for the Sheriff's Department employees and those employees identified as a medium or high risk on the Wythe County Infectious Disease Preparedness and Response Plan shall be provided the stipend from the CARES Act funding. All others will be provided stipend from the general fund. The total amount funding from the CARES Act is estimated to be $348,849. Total amount funding from the general fund is estimated to be $113,706. Staff requests that the Board of Supervisors amend and appropriate $113,706 to account 1101-413201 for the stipend fund for the general fund. Furthermore, the staff requests that the full-time stipend be dispersed over 2 paychecks, November 30th and December 15th.
Coming from committee doesn't need a second. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah. So we're gonna take $113,706 out of general funds to pay this. Right? No way we can get it off the COVID deal?
No, sir, there's not.
And that's part of the reason we revised the infectious disease plan. We went back and based on what we've seen since when we first done it, based on some people's job duties, we felt like we could put them under the, what was it, the high risk?
Medium or high risk, yeah.
Medium or high risk. And that's why we moved those. Anything else, Mr. McRoberts?
No, I see a lot with that.
Did most of our employees continue to work all the way through?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
I'll abstain.
Ah,
Aye.
And Mr. Terry's not.
Don't like it, but.
Yeah, you can call back in now.
So approved. Anything else from the Budget Committee, Mr. Smith?
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there are two requests that have come in from the IT department that I handed out to you. If you all would mind considering and adding those to the agenda. If not, we will put them on the next meeting. But one is for $9,756 for additional laptops. One is for access control, one's for IT, one's for water department, two is for the Wythe County Sheriff's Office. And one is to be the spare to be used by departments as needed. And then the other is a request for $795.30 for the bags and things for the laptops to go in.
Do we need to do those separately?
You could combine both of them together.
Entertain a motion to approve the CARES Act request from Ms. Kegley for IT.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
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 So approved. Anything else for Budget Committee?
That's all.
Mr. Barrett, is that it?
Yes, sir.
Moving on, next on the item on the agenda is Water Committee.
Okay, the Water Committee met on November the 9th, 2020, and recommends that the Board of Supervisors review proposed options for revising the water rate structure. The following indicates a revision to change our base rate structure to a revised structure used by American Water Works Association. The base rate is charged to commercial customers based on equivalent residential connections. Several scenarios are shown for discussion of base rates and volume rates. So it's in y'all's court. Y'all decide what you want to raise it to.
Mr. Barrett, you want to?
Yeah, I'll start, and Mr. Crisp is here with us, and
Without me?
No, this was November the 9th. Wasn't you there?
I didn't know we had one on November the 9th.
this was the meeting, the October meeting that we met and reviewed several items, and one of them was the rates.
Right.
And we requested to not put it on the next meeting to give time to put some additional paperwork together to give to everyone to discuss.
I'm fine with that. I just, when it said the 9th of November,
Yeah,
I know
you're right. It
I
does say
know I did
November.
not meet on the 9th.
No, but it's
You're
not the
right,
9th,
we didn't.
correct.
So this was actually the October meeting, and it's just
Yes.
now getting to
Yes.
us. Okay, sorry.
Wrong date on the
Yeah.
memo. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. I was thinking it was last month's meeting. I didn't even,
Stacy's back, if you didn't hear.
Okay.
I try not to miss any meeting.
hey, I show up for ones we don't have, so.
Mr.
And I'll take responsibility for that. I think I was working on that memo after we did the two committee meetings on Monday the 9th. for budget and for
Economic development.
economic development, and I just put the 9th in there instead of the October date.
I can
So
understand that.
the,
As long as I'm fine. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss a meeting.
first of all, there is not a recommendation of a rate, and do not expect when we come out of here tonight for there to be a recommendation of a rate. This is just a little bit to lay the groundwork for some options that are being discussed and are being looked at, to get some feedback from you all. I mentioned to the chairman earlier, this may involve some work sessions in the future of trying to come through with this. The first page, starting on page 113, is just a summary, and we will start from there. And that is our revenue requirements. And generally, this is coming off of our budget. So obviously, you see it, unfortunately, it doesn't show very clear on the blue in there, but the operation and maintenance expenses highlighted in blue of $980,551. You'll see four $25,000 items that are mentioned there for vehicle replacement, annual working capital, contingency reserve, and operating funds. That brings up the total operating cost to $1,080,000. Take away our recovered costs. And the recovered costs are operation and maintenance. Part of what we perform is shared work on lines that are shared in cost with the town of Wytheville, and they reimburse us that. So the total operating cost is $1,030,000. The capital cost, and this is where the large chunk of our costs are associated with, you have existing debt service payments on our lines of $1,172,036, and debt service payments for the New River Regional Water Authority of $441,413. On the next, that totals $1.6 million of debt service payments. If you'll turn over to the next page, you'll see the top three numbers highlighted in purple, which are basically recovered cost, where the New River Regional Water Authority and Wytheville pay us back for their portion and share of our debt service cost. So you come down to basically a net cost of our total debt less what they're reimbursing us of about $1.25 million, which you can see is roughly 20-25% more than what our operating budget is. And that has come from, and we are highly leveraged and highly in debt on our water system, and that's come from extending water, well, basically throughout lots of areas of the counties, from Rural Retreat to Speedwell to Barron Springs to all the way out to Exit 86, just lots of projects, and then obviously the main line from the Austensville Water Treatment Plant running all the way up to the town limits. But what that comes down to is a net revenue requirement of $2.6 million. So in order to cover all of the costs, debt, and everything else, the total revenue should be around $2.6 million. Right now, the third page, page 115 of your package, shows a base rate fee at $20.79. Currently, everyone that has a meter is paying the base rate of $20.79. All customers that are not connected to the system are paying the $20.79. What here on the base rate fees is a proposal to make a revision on the commercial side and technically residential side with larger meters. But basically, and I'll have Don step in here and jump in at any time, but basically a 1-inch on the thing, you see a residential meter has an ERC, an equivalent residential connection factor of 1. The base rate is $20.79. You go down to a commercial meter, a 3/4-inch meter, same thing, a base rate factor of 1, or equivalent residential connection of 1, same base rate, $20.79. A 1-inch meter has the equivalency of 2.5 times the regular. So their rate would be the 2079 multiplied times 2.5. Their monthly base rate would be 5198. A 2-inch meter, 8 times the base rate, would go up to 166.32. 4-inch meter goes up, and it would go up to the 311.85. So, now, numbers-wise, basically, with 1-inch meters, we have about 20 customers with a 1-inch meter. We have 2 customers with a 1.5-inch meter. We have 36 customers with a 2-inch meter, and then 1 each with a 3, 4, and 6-inch meter that is in there. And those numbers are shown a few pages over on all the scenarios that are spelled out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It shows how many customers are actually with the meters. Part of the goal of this is, number one, getting this to the AWWA standard. Number two is, if you have a larger meter, you should be paying a larger fee than just what a normal residential connection of the 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter should be paying. Currently, our revenue is about 70% residential, 30% commercial. Our usage is about 60% residential and 40% commercial. So that means that, in essence, our residential customers are really helping to supplement our payments towards our commercial operations. So that is a proposal on a revision to the base rate fee, and I'll stop there and just see if there's any questions about that. All right. If not, we'll move over to the next page, and these are just 5 scenarios in addition to our current scenario that are out there, and then we'll and there's many other options that we can go from there. But basically, to go down the sheet without going through all the numbers right now, basically you see our total annual usage, and we're using that to stay the same. We're basing on number of meter equivalents, the base charge, and then a volume charge residential. Our volume charge currently is $10.40 for every 1,000 gallons. You come down and you'll see the residential revenue and the commercial revenue percentages, and you see the total water revenues about halfway down there highlighted in blue of $1,936,000. That's basically along the lines of what we were anticipating in the budget this year for our revenue projections. As we just discussed, we are needing $2.6 million as our revenue requirements. So currently, we anticipate running in the red about $684,000 on our water revenue side. That has to be supplemented from reserves or from the general fund. The bottom section below that basically shows the average residential bill for 2,800 gallons. And then the next line shows the rural development average monthly residential bill using their calculations. The next line below that shows the rural development grant eligibility for Barrett Mill Road. And then the 2 lines down below that shows the grant eligibility for a Dunford or Olive Branch project. And on the first ones, you can see at our rate of $37.92, we are $2.45 below grant eligibility. For Barrett Mill, we are $11.62 below grant eligibility for Dunford and Olive Branch Road. So what has been looked at is several scenarios up here. Scenario number 1 looked at in general, trying to get a fixed rate, a based rate, that is covering your debt service. Basically, the total debt of your system being out there. From when we first did some calculations of the numbers, Don has gone back and reworked some of the numbers, and on the commercial side, base revenue commercial, we had originally anticipated, I believe, about 6 or 7 customers with 6-inch meters off of our software system. And actually, 7 customers do have that 6-inch meter, but only one of those is actually using it for volume. All the other ones are actually just fire meters that sit out there, and we don't register or read anything on the fire meter unless the fire meter goes off. So no revenue has been generated or received on those in the process. But if the base rate went up to 23.25, and that was just a starting number that was looked at, it was originally bringing in a little over 1.1 million. It's now bringing in right at $1 million. You can see the residential, the flat rate, the flat spigot rate, the residential reduced, and the commercial rate, what would come in. The total base revenue is $979,000. Using the, at this time, in working it through, Mr. Grant had worked some numbers backwards and lowered the 705 and 804, trying to work back into a number. This year we had pulled 440,000 out. That's why he's got base revenues lower there. You see the total at the bottom there with the lower volume revenue and the increased base charge is still only bringing in $1.9 million. We're still quite a bit short. Scenario number 2 drops the base rate to $18 for everyone. That lowers your total base revenue to $758,000. So you're not covering anywhere close to your full debt service amount that you're currently covering. It leaves it at $1040 for the residential volume and goes to $1140. And you can see that brings it to $2.2 million, leaves about $400,000 under what we're looking for. And it does bring you up to about a 66% residential percentage and a 34% commercial percentage, bringing you up a little higher, closer to your volume. Scenario number 3 is exactly our current rates right now. $20.79 remaining the same for the base charge, and $10.40 for volume for both residential and commercial. When you get down to the bottom, you will see that does bring the total revenue up there to $2,271,000 as estimated revenue. I will skip number 4 for a second and go to number 5. Number 5 leaves the rate the same at $20.79, leaves our residential volume the same. It does increase the commercial volume to $11.40. Which means obviously they're paying $1 more per thousand, and you will see the net on it is $2,325,000, still leaving us short of our 2.6. But obviously, these are in increasing order going across there of which one is bringing in the most money in the process. Scenario 4 just drops the base rate down to $20. Instead of the $20.79. It leaves the commercial rate up $1 at $11.40 over the $10.40. Now, in the pink in the bottom, the good news on the rates is everything from scenario 2 over to scenario number 5 gets the Barrett Mill Road project into grant eligibility based on the guidelines at this point in time. Dunford and Olive Branch still do not, and these guidelines are based on median household income in the district where the projects are being constructed. So that has a higher income in the Dunford and Olive Branch Road versus the Barrett Mill Road, which falls in the Speedwell district. So that is the scenarios. The remaining pages are just actually the numbers that break out for scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, scenario 4. all of the numbers. One of the goals, our current debt I mentioned is $1.2 million. In 2024, Mr. Crisp, is that correct? 2025, we have a large decrease in our debt service. And we dropped back down because of, at that point in time, we will have paid off one of the debts associated with the New River Regional Water Authority. And at that point in time, our debt service would drop back to about $800,000. That does not include the estimated probably $100,000 for the Barrett Mill project, should we do it. So that would be added to it. So it would be up around 900. So part of the process is trying to get the flat rate at a level that is around $800,000 or $900,000 that is paying for your debt service is one of the goals that we think we should be trying to work for. We realize debt service will always be changing, but we will be adding new projects, and these projects with rural development funding are typically 40-year loans, so they're going to be on the books for quite some time. I've talked quite a bit, so I'll let y'all ask questions from there.
These debt services can't be refinanced at a lower interest rate now?
Most all of these through rural development at 40 years, you cannot refinance at a lower rate in the process. You could get a lower rate, but you won't get the long 30 or 25 or 40-year term that's left on those. So in essence, you would end up having a lower interest rate, but you would have a higher annual payment in the process. And that's the reason why most all water projects are on the 40-year loan, is to keep the debt service amounts as small as possible so that the users of the system can have rates that are affordable. And we're not saying that we necessarily have to jump to all of this immediately, but we've got to take some of these steps in order to start shoring up our finances in order to do the projects that we're trying to go forward with.
Mr. Baird, you want to schedule some work sessions to get together and go over this? I know, I mean, I don't know what the pleasure of the board is. I know it's a bad time of year to do it between now and the first of the year, but.
And I encourage you at any time, any of you all, to give us a call, and Don and I, especially Don, will sit down with you and go through the numbers and go through options. You know, I know it helps maybe sit and look at all the debt services out there, see everything that's sitting there, anything we can provide you. I know this is confusing, and I'd hope the numbers at least make sense, a little bit of how we're trying to change the structure a little bit. We are also looking at, and we'll be talking to the Water Committee with some more numbers. We talked about it briefly the next time. Some initial, what's the correct term for it? Capacity fees or allocation fees? Availability fee. Yeah. Basically, what they'll be looking at is some one-time costs. Basically, if somebody comes in right now and locates along our water line, they pay a $1,000 connection fee and they go. If it's an industry, that's a homeowner. If it's an industry that comes in, they pay the actual cost for their 2-inch meter, their 4-inch meter, or their 6-inch meter. Well, they may be using 1 million gallons. You are going to collect revenue from the water usage, but you end up, that availability of 1 million gallons you don't currently have. So that means you're going to have to be investing in expanding your New River Valley plant. So one of the things you do with an availability fee is establish everyone that connects along an existing line pays into an availability fee to help build up those reserves for the time when you have to do it. We currently do this in the sewer treatment plant. When an industry comes in, when citizens connect, you pay an amount that goes back into a reserve fund because we know we can only treat 1.5 million gallons right now. So every time we add a user, that keeps building us up towards our maximum. When we've got to expand the plant, we have that money sitting in reserve with all users that we continue to add for us to expand the plant without having to go in as much debt as we may have to by not having that available.
I wouldn't mind having a work session just to go over all of those options and have time to ask lots of questions because it is confusing.
I think it would be very good. I think it'll take us some time to do it. We can go down to the EOC room, shoot up numbers on the big board.
I think that'd be helpful.
Move around.
Do you want to schedule something now, or do you want to wait till the water committee gets those other numbers together and do it all at once?
We meet back on the 24th. Water Committee meets next week. I think waiting and maybe scheduling it after the 24th meeting, recessing and maybe doing it the first or second week of December, and time maybe if that works out with everyone. I know it's a busy time, but
Is that good with everybody?
We'll make it work.
no corn to be chopped.
Done that.
He couldn't think of another excuse.
Oh, I can come up with an excuse.
Anything else from the water committee, Mr. Porter?
I believe that was it. That was all that was on my sheet from my meeting that we didn't have.
Next on the item on the agenda is Board of Supervisors time. Mr. Terry, are you with us?
No, sir, I don't have anything at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Horning?
The only thing I had is, I've already contacted VDOT about it, was the manure pit over in, I mean, they tracked, I bet they was 4 inches of it in the road. I don't understand why they can't make them just go straight across the road instead of tracking it down the road.
Mr. Vaught had already contacted VDOT. Unfortunately, I have an employee now that lives on that road and came in that afternoon, about an hour or 30 minutes before Mr. Vaught sent his email and mentioned the same thing to me. She did say the rain did help for the day, but it'll probably be back tomorrow. So I did talk to Mr. Fowler about that. They had the discussions, it gets better, it turns around, it gets bad, they have discussions. They are trying to see what type of enforcement actions or anything they can do. They're realizing it's a continuing, ongoing problem, and a dangerous problem at that.
Well, I mean, normally they're just tracking mud across the road when they're feeding in the winter.
Yeah.
But now, once or twice a year, they're hauling manure. And, I mean, you can't help it. I mean, I understand because you spread it in the field and then you drive back through it and it's going to get on the tires. And honestly, I mean, they're using tractors that's got 8 tires on them instead of 4. So they're going to track a lot of it out there.
Chief Deputy Foster, refresh my memory, is there agriculture clause for depositing debris on the highway?
It's still on the books as far as I know.
But there's nothing that exempts agriculture.
Sometimes that's a whole different beast. When you're looking at the farm use and all this stuff, we just have to research from an agricultural standpoint. See if there's any state or state codes that I know burning debris on highways still violates.
Remind me and I'll show you the pictures I got.
Did you get pictures of it?
Yes. And we're not talking about just a little bit of mud off the tractor tire.
It's not like
it was to the point it was a safety hazard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was awful.
Anything else, Mr. Horning?
I believe that was it.
Mr. McRoberts?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Ms. Lawson?
I have one thing. It's not really important to discuss during my supervisor time, but I am working on something kind of, I hope that's going to be fun for our staff. I want to do a county office door decoration contest, if that makes any sense. And then I figured, each office could put money in a pot, and then we'll do some type of fun way of voting, or someone can be a judge. And whoever wins, they can pick a charity to, to donate the money to. So maybe something fun. And I'm bringing that up now so, because I never get to talk to all of you all at once. So if you have any input or ideas, I'll be sending an email out. And Mr. Bear, I'll send it to you and let you kind of distribute it to the departments maybe.
Mr. Hankins has an advantage. He has a double door.
So the
And half of our departments,
competition
and half of our
starts.
departments don't have doors.
And his wife is connected with Craftsman, so.
I could see Colleen making a door. But anyway, that's all I have.
Mr. Cook,
I only had one incident, and Mr. Bears already took care of it.
Mr. Smith,
I got a couple things, Mr. Chairman. One is Orion Drive. Mr. Byron, I know you'd sent the email out with that. If we can continue to push on that, those residents are, especially after last night's rain,
I looked at it
it's pretty rough.
when we were
which
riding
road
through.
was it?
Orion Drive.
Brett Boer Drive.
So if you could on that one. And then two, from today that I didn't have a chance to send the email out to Mr. Fowler, Stillwell Road on our side. Our side's a little bit better than the Pulaski County side. It's trashed on that side, but our side's in pretty rough shape as well as Reed Creek Drive, our road down through there.
Okay.
There's some spots that's getting pretty rough down in there. And then the last thing I got, I want to thank Mr. Crisp for getting the information for Whispering Pines, that water project from the mid-'80s there. I'll be meeting with those residents out there, Mr. Crisp, and give them that feedback. I know that they are interested in getting water the rest of the way around that residential area there. So, but they were. I think there's some preconceived reasoning that the water stopped where it did. I won't go into detail. We can talk offline on that one, but you know, it's their opinions of why it stopped there. So, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I did receive a few calls from the Speedwell District.
A few.
But Mr. Barrett and Mr. Horny, we'll work on that. We might not be able to do much about the smell, but we can definitely address that. That's really all I have. You have anything else, Mr. Barrett?
Mr. Chairman, with the item I handed out, I would request that we go into closed session.
I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session under Code of Virginia Section 2.2-3711A5, Prospective Industry KP 2020,
Mr. Chairman, will you add A1 personnel for emergency management?
and A1 discussion of personnel matters, the emergency management position.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Sorry.
Aye.
We're down close.
Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors that such a meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wythe County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convened in the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors.
Entertain a motion to ratify the certification.
I make that.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Now,
Aye.
Anything else, Mr. Barry?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all.
Mr. Hankins, anything? Ms. Collins?
I got one more. This violation that's at the end of our packet for the water violation, is that anything we need to be concerned about?
No, sir, that, the health department notifies us that is the campground that the,
Federal government?
federal government runs up there, and they were in violation of, their reporting up there, or their regulations. Now, what I would love to see is for the federal government to say, well, let's stem water all the way from Wytheville all the way to the campground to do it, but I don't know that they'll put that much money into it, but that would put our water up 52.
course, it'd be,
That's what I'd love to see.
that's the government doing it, it'd be the half-inch line.
Like, I'd like the state to extend water to the Foster Falls State Park. We could pick up a lot more customers down through there like that.
Anybody else have anything? Hearing none, we'll be adjourned.